They say you can't come home again. Whoever said that clearly never had unfinished business buried 6 feet under their childhood front yard. It had been 10 years since my father, Robert Winters, was found dead in our driveway. One clean bullet through the chest. I was 18 then, still naive enough to believe that justice worked the way it did in textbooks. The man who went to prison for it, Sam Keller, swore he was innocent. I swore I didn't care. Until now. The call came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, just as I was finishing a deposition in New York. "Miss Winters," the voice said, hesitant, almost apologetic. "This is Sheriff Dalton from Asbrook County. Sam Keller, he's requesting you as counsel." My pen stopped midair. "What?" "He says he'll only speak to you." I didn't know what to say. A decade had passed. My father's murder was the one thing I'd built my entire life trying to forget, and the reason I'd got into law in the first place. 2 days later, I was back on the road, the blue ridges of North Carolina stretching like old scars in the distance. Ashbrook hadn't changed. The same cracked streets, the same small diner, the same whispering neighbors peeking from behind lace curtains. Only I had changed. A little colder, a little sharper, and carrying the weight of memories I wish I could bury. My childhood home stood at the end of Willow Lane, its white paint now peeling, its porch sagging slightly. The roses my mother used to tend were long dead. I hesitated before knocking, but the door opened before I could. "Claire?" My mother stood there, her hair now streaked with silver, her face pale as dust. She smiled, or tried to. "I didn't think you'd really come." "I wasn't planning to, but I need to know why he wants me." Her eyes flickered. "He's a murderer, Claire. That's all you need to know." But her voice trembled when she said it. Inside, the house smelled of cedar and lemon cleaner. My father's chair still sat by the fireplace, untouched. The air felt heavy, like grief had soaked into the walls. That night, I unpacked in my old room, the posters faded, the floorboards creaking the way they used to. I should have felt safe. Instead, I felt watched. The next morning, I drove to Ashbrook County Prison. The guard led me down a narrow hallway, the smell of bleach and rust thick in the air. When I entered the interview room, Sam Keller was already there. He looked older, thin, gray around the edges, his hands folded neatly on the table. When he saw me, his eyes softened. "You look like him." "I didn't come here from nostalgia," I replied, sitting across from him. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who'll listen." His voice was low, gravelly. "They lied to you, Claire. Your father wasn't who you think he was. And your mother—" "Careful," I warned. He leaned forward. "The truth's in that old house. Find his files. The night he died, he wasn't the victim. He was the reason." Before I could ask what that meant, the guard announced time was up. Sam stood, placing his palms flat on the table. "You find those files, and you'll see why I didn't pull that trigger." Back at the house, I couldn't shake his words. The rain had started again, tapping against the windows like impatient fingers. I found myself standing before my father's office, the one room my mother never entered anymore. The doorknob was stiff, the air inside cold. Everything was preserved. The books lined up neatly, the smell of tobacco still faintly lingering. On his desk sat an old briefcase, locked. I surfed the drawers and found a small brass key taped under the table. My heart quickened. The lock clicked open. Inside, there were stacks of papers, photographs, and one worn leather notebook. Flipping through it, I realized it wasn't a work journal. It was a ledger. Payments, initials, coded messages. and names I recognized from town. People my father had represented, business owners, and Sheriff Dalton. My pulse raced. My father wasn't just a lawyer, he was blackmailing them. I heard the floorboard creak behind me. I turned sharply. My mother stood at the door, her expression unreadable. "What are you doing in here?" she asked softly. I held up the notebook. "Did you know about this?" Her lips parted, then closed. For a second, I thought she might tell me the truth. But then she said, "Some things should stay buried, Claire. That's what your father wanted." "No," I whispered. "That's what you want." Her face hardened. "Drop the case. Go back to New York. You owe your father that much." But I didn't. I owed him the truth, whatever it turned out to be. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain and the echo of my father's name in the dark. For the first time in years, I wasn't sure who the real victim was. And as thunder rolled over Ashbrook, I made myself a silent vow. If our family had built their peace on lies, I would tear it apart, brick by brick, even if it meant destroying what was left of us. The next morning, the sun barely rose over Ashbrook. The sky hung low, gray, and swollen with the promise of another storm. It felt fitting. I drove to the courthouse, the old red brick building that had once seemed grand to me as a child. Now it just looked tired, like a place that had seen too many lies dressed up as justice. Sheriff Dalton met me at the door, his face tighter than I remembered. "Didn't expect to see you back, Claire," he said, his eyes flicking with something that wasn't quite welcome. "Neither did I replied, handing him the formal paperwork that granted me access to the old case files. He hesitated before signing. "You really think reopening this will help anyone? Keller's where he belongs." "Then you shouldn't be worried," I said evenly. He didn't answer, just looked at me for a long moment before muttering, "You sound just like your father." That wasn't a compliment. The file room smelled of dust and regret. I sat at a metal table surrounded by stacks of boxes marked Winter's Case, 2015. When I opened the first one, the sense of old paper hit me, mixed with something like smoke. There it was. The autopsy report, witness statements, police photographs. I scanned through each document like I was chasing a ghost. At first, everything seemed to line up. Fingerprints on the gun, traces of gunpowder on Keller's hands, motive rooted in a business dispute. But the more I read, the more cracks appeared. The fingerprint analysis was dated 2 days after the evidence was supposedly sealed. And the ballistic report, the one linking the bullet to Keller's gun, had a missing page. Someone had cleaned this file, carefully. As I turned another page, a photograph slipped out, one that wasn't supposed to be there. It was my father, standing beside Peller, smiling. Not the kind of smile you shared with your enemy. I stared at it for a long time before calling the prison again. "I need to see Keller." When I arrived, he looked tired than before, but his eyes were alive with something fierce. Hope, maybe. "You found something," he said the moment I sat down. "Why didn't my father have a photo with you?" I demanded. He chuckled softly. "Because he wasn't my enemy, Claire. He was my partner." My stomach twisted. Partner in what? In a deal gone bad. Real bad. Your father thought he could play both sides. He blackmailed half this town. The sheriff, the mayor, even a judge. When it all started to fall apart, he tried to pin it on me. I didn't kill him, but someone made sure I'd look guilty enough. I wanted to deny it, to tell him he was lying. But I'd seen that ledger. I'd seen the sheriff's name. "Who else knew?" I asked. "Ask your mother," he said quietly. "She knew everything." The guard's voice cut through the tension. "Time's up." I left the prison feeling like my chest had been split open. The town looked the same. People walking, talking, pretending life went on. But I could feel it now, the rot, underneath the surface. When I got home, my mother was on the porch trimming dead flowers from their stems. "You've been digging," she said without looking up. "I met Keller again." Her hands froze in midair. That man ruined our lives. Or maybe he's the only one telling the truth. She turned sharply, eyes flashing. "You think your father was perfect? You think he didn't have secrets? He destroyed people, Claire. He used them." My breath caught. "So you knew?" Her jaw tightened. "I knew enough to protect what was left." I stepped closer. "Protect what, Mom? His reputation or yourself?" Her face went pale. For a heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then she said softly, "You don't know what you're getting into." "I already am," I said, turning away. That night, I went through the ledger again. One of the entries stood out. E.W. beside a payment of $50,000, dated 3 days before my father's death. E.W. Eleanor Winters. My mother. The truth hit me like a punch to the ribs. I rushed downstairs, but the house was dark. My mother's bedroom door was closed. I reached for the handle, but stopped when I saw light seeping from underneath and the faint sound of her voice. She was on the phone. "No, she doesn't know yet," she whispered. Pause. "She's looking at the files. If she finds out what really happened, it's over." I backed away, heart pounding so hard it hurt. My hands trembled as I climbed the stairs, each step echoing like a countdown. In that moment, the woman I loved, defended, and trusted my whole life turned into a stranger. And for the first time, I wondered if the real killer wasn't sitting behind bars, but sleeping just down the hall. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the old house felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper calling my name. By sunrise, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't leaving until I knew the truth. When I went downstairs, my mother was already in the kitchen, calmly making tea as if she hadn't just confessed to something on the phone last night. She looked up and smiled faintly. "You didn't sleep," she said. "Neither did you," I replied. We stood in silence for a long moment, two women bound by blood and secrets neither of us wanted to face. Finally, I placed the ledger on the table between us. "Tell me what this means." Her hand froze halfway to her cup. "Where did you get that?" "His office. It was locked away. Why does it have your initials beside a $50,000 payment 3 days before he died?" Her expression cracked. For just a second, I saw fear flicker behind her calm exterior. Then she sighed, setting the cup down carefully. "Sit down, Claire." I didn't. "Tell me." She looked out the window, voice low. "Your father wasn't the man you'd think he was. You remember the law firm he ran with Keller?" I nodded slowly. "He said they were partners." "They were more than that. They were laundering money, drug money, for half the county's politicians. When Keller tried to back out, your father panicked. He framed him, told the sheriff he had proof Keller was blackmailing him." I felt sick. "So Keller was innocent?" "At first," she said bitterly. "But when your father realized Keller had real evidence against him, he decided to destroy it. That's when I stepped in." I blinked. "You?" She looked at me now, eyes glassy but steady. "He hit me, Claire, that night. I tried to stop him from going after Keller. He said if I ever interfered again, he'd make sure you paid the price instead." My throat tightened. "You're saying he was violent?" She nodded slowly. "I'd lived with it for years. The anger, the manipulation, the threats. That money in the ledger wasn't blackmail. It was a payoff. I paid him to leave, to disappear before Keller came back for revenge. I sank into the chair, but he didn't leave. No, she whispered. He found out I'd taken money from his own account. He came home early that night, furious. We fought. He grabbed the gun he kept in the drawer. Her voice broke. I tried to stop him. It went off. Once. Silence. Only the sound of the clock ticking between us. My chest ached as I tried to process her words. You're saying you killed him. Tears slid down her cheeks. It wasn't supposed to happen. I panicked. Keller showed up minutes later. Your father had called him earlier that day. He saw the body, saw me with the gun. I begged him not to tell. He took the blame. The room tilted. The air felt too heavy to breathe. Why didn't you say something? You let an innocent man rot in prison for 10 years. Her eyes hardened suddenly. You think the town would have believed me? A widow accusing her dead husband of abuse and corruption? No, Claire. They'd have buried me too. I stood, shaking. You buried yourself anyway. The truth burned like acid in my veins. My mother, the woman who raised me to believe in right and wrong, had killed my father. Accidentally or not, she'd let another man take the fall. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Claire, listen to me. Everything I did was for you, to protect you. Protect me? I laughed bitterly. You turned my whole life into a lie. Her lips trembled. If you tell anyone, you'll lose everything. The house, the inheritance, your career. They'll destroy us. For a moment, I almost pitied her. Then I remembered Keller's face, the exhaustion, the lost years. I'm not you, I said quietly. I don't bury the truth. I defend it. I grabbed the ledger and walked out the door. The sky had darkened again, storm clouds building like judgment. I drove straight to the sheriff's office, heart pounding with every mile. When I arrived, Sheriff Dalton was waiting outside as if he'd expected me. You found something, he said. I nodded. You knew this, didn't you? You knew Keller was innocent. He exhaled, avoiding my eyes. Your father paid me to keep quiet. I didn't know how deep it went. But when he died, it was easier to let the town believe Keller did it. Your family had power, money. People don't question that here. I stared at him in disbelief. You let this happen? He looked at me, regret flickering across his face. So what are you going to do now, counselor? Turn your own mother in? The question hung in the air, heavier than the storm rolling in behind me. I didn't answer. I couldn't, not yet. Because no matter what I did next, someone was going to pay. And I had to decide whether it would be the guilty or the ones I loved. The courthouse was silent except for the rain hammering against the windows. The storm from the night before hadn't passed. It had only grown worse, like the chaos inside me. Keller sat beside me at the defense table, his hands trembling slightly. He'd been released on bail after I filed the new evidence, the ledger, my father's accounts, the confession. But none of it guaranteed freedom, because I hadn't turned in the full truth. Not yet. The judge entered, stern and cold, and the bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise." When we sat, I could feel everyone's eyes on me. The prodigal daughter turned defender, standing against her own family. The prosecutor, Harris, rose first. Your Honor, this case has haunted this town for 10 years. We're here to determine whether Richard Keller is guilty of the murder of Thomas Green, or whether someone else has been hiding behind his name. He turned toward me. Miss Green, I trust you've reviewed your evidence? I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to submit Exhibit D, the financial ledger found in the victim's office. The judge examined it. Proceed. I stood, my voice steady, but my pulse racing. This ledger contains records of illegal payments made by Thomas Green, my father, to local officials, including Sheriff Dalton, to conceal a money laundering scheme. 3 days before his death, a payment of $50,000 was made to my mother, Evelyn Green. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Harris frowned. Are you suggesting your mother was involved? I swallowed. I'm suggesting she was desperate, and that the man my father became, the man you all admired, was dangerous. The judge raised a brow. Dangerous how? I hesitated. Say it, Claire. I could still hear my mother's voice that night. Everything I did was for you. But truth has its own weight, and I couldn't carry both her sins and mine. Your Honor, I began. My mother confessed to shooting my father. It was an accident during a violent argument. Mr. Keller arrived moments later, panicked, and took the blame. Gasps filled the room. Even Keller looked at me in shock. The judge's gavel slammed down. Order! Harris stepped forward, eyes sharp. You're telling this court your own mother killed your father, and you have her confession? Yes, I said quietly. It's recorded. I placed the flash drive on the table. My hand shook as I did it. I had copied the recording from her phone before leaving home, the one where she admitted everything. Harris played it aloud. The courtroom went dead silent as her voice echoed. It wasn't supposed to happen. He came at me. The gun went off. Keller saw everything. He promised to protect you. When the recording ended, not even the storm outside could fill the silence that followed. The judge leaned forward. Miss Green, are you aware of what this means? Your testimony could incriminate your mother. I nodded. Yes, Your Honor. But an innocent man has already paid for a crime he didn't commit. I can't let another 10 years go by with this lie. The judge stared at me for a long moment, then sighed. This court will order the immediate arrest of Evelyn Green pending investigation. Mr. Keller, you are hereby cleared of all charges. Keller's breath caught. His eyes, tired and heavy with grief, met mine. Why would you do this for me? He whispered. I forced a faint smile. Because my father ruined your life, and my mother finished it. Someone had to stop the cycle. He nodded slowly. You're stronger than both of them. I wish I'd believed that. That evening, I stood outside my childhood home one last time. The sheriff's car was gone. So was my mother. Inside, the air still smelled like her perfume, faint jasmine and guilt. I walked to the living room, the place where it had all happened. The gun, the argument, the beginning of everything that broke us. On the mantel, a photo of my parents smiled down at me, my father's arm around her, both pretending to be perfect. I took the frame in my hands and whispered, You both lied to protect your pride. I told the truth to protect my soul. Then I set it face down. The rain outside slowed, turning into a soft drizzle. I stepped out, locked the door, and didn't look back. As I walked down the empty road, I knew my mother would hate me for what I'd done, maybe forever. But I'd made a vow. The night I became a lawyer, the night I promised to defend truth above all else. And tonight, I finally kept it.